All right. So I'm not sure if anyone heard my greeting in the beginning, but I'm just going to do it again. So hi, everybody. And I am so super excited to welcome author Celesta Rimington. I am so happy that she is here. So Celesta is the author of the middle grade novel, The Elephant's Girl, which if you've ever been in the store at all, you've probably heard me talk about it incessantly, especially if you are in the 9 to 12 age range. And it was also selected for the 2021-2022 Texas Bluebonnet Master List, the 2022 Sequoia Book Awards Master List, and was named a Reading the West Book Award finalist. She is also a musical theater performer and an active participant in her local writing community. She lives in Utah with her husband and 2 children. And The Elephant's Girl is now officially, it is out in paperback. And her new middle grade novel, which is what we're mostly going to be talking about tonight, Tips for Magicians, is releasing this coming Tuesday, August 24th. And if you'd like to learn more, you can visit her on her website at celestarimington.com. Welcome, Celesta. It's so exciting and nice to have you here again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and to chat with you, Marielle.
Yay! Yes, so, and I say again, because if you don't know, Celesta was actually our very first virtual event that we ever did last year for The Elephant's Girl, so she is back now, and we are all very happy to have her back. Oh my gosh. So, I'm very excited, guys. I'm very excited about this. So first off, let's kick it off with talking about the ins and outs of your new book, Tips for Magicians. So can you just tell us a little about the story and what the initial spark was that set you off on writing this book?
Yes, and I want to show you, even though the book doesn't come out for 5 more days, I have my author copy. So I do have one right here. Isn't that lovely? I love the cover.
I love
it. So this book, Tips for Magicians, is about a boy named Harrison, and his family is just his parents and himself, and his mom is a famous singer, and that's what she does. She performs, and his dad produces his mom's shows. And Harrison isn't a performer himself, but he does have a nice singing voice, and something special he shares with his mom is they like to sing together. But when his mom dies unexpectedly, the music kind of stops for Harrison, and he finds comfort in practicing magic tricks to become a master magician. Then his dad decides to take a producing job on the road, so he sends Harrison to live in the southern Utah desert in an art village called Muse with his Aunt Maggie, and she runs an art gallery there. And when Harrison moves there, he realizes he's been there before. Well, he already knew he'd been there before, but he starts to remember things about it because he had lived there for a summer when his mom performed at the local amphitheater in the canyon. So he kind of reconnects with a friend he had made from years ago, and he learns that there's this story in the town, in this art village, that there is a magical muse that lives in the canyon. And there's a tradition in the town that they used to have an art contest every year. They still have it every year. But it used to be that the winners of the art contest would be granted a wish from the magical muse. But the muse hasn't been seen in years. So Harrison and his new friends and the stray dogs go off in search of the muse to discover how they can bring it back.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited because I did, like I told you, I was talking earlier on with Celesta. I did read there's a little excerpt snippet I was able to read. And man, it's just really the first chapter. And guys, it's like emotional gut punch right off the bat. I love Harrison and I so want more. And I am kind of interested because this is different, but not different than The Elephant's Girl. But why did you, what set you off on writing, this particular book?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that because it's very interesting. I get so many ideas from different things in life, and then they'll just kind of send me down a path as I explore and I ask what-if questions. So my son is a musical theater performer. And when I started this idea, my son was 12, which is Harrison's age. And so I was around musical theater kids a lot and performers a lot, and I've done a lot of musical theater myself. And my son actually got a job performing at an outdoor theater in a canyon, similar to the one that I put into this story. And because he was a young kid and he had this job, I actually moved there and lived with him for several months in St. George, Utah, which is where this is kind of based off of, this location in the story. So while I was living there and he was working, he was performing, and I just had my days while he's rehearsing and things to just explore the area. And I spent a lot of time in art galleries and going to chalk festivals and hiking in the canyon and just sitting outside and feeling the heat of those red rocks as they just kind of, the heat comes off of them during the day, and it's got an energy about it. And I also watched more than 50 shows in this professional outdoor theater in the canyon, and it felt magical to me. And that kind of got me thinking about some characters I had in my head, some story ideas that I had, and this as a setting, and Harrison was born.
Oh, that is so cool. That is an awesome origin story for this. Fantastic. Oh my goodness. All right. So we actually got a little comment. Someone on here, Unlikely Courage, posted a heart emoji for you.
Right.
So
thank you.
Just so yes. So kind of tying into the book still, obviously, as booksellers, so we're always trying to find the best way to sell books we love to our customers. So my question is, how would you sell your book to excited readers?
Well, I think first I would address that it has a lot with new friends, family connections, a desert setting with magical elements, so readers that really love interesting, unique settings that are very, you can feel it, you can smell it. Readers that love animals, because there are a lot of dogs and falconry, desert falconry in this book. One of the friends that Harrison makes is a 12-year-old apprentice falconer, and he has his own hawk and invites Harrison to go slope soaring, or to go hunting with the hawk with him in the desert. So also anybody who might be interested in books about grief or books that address grief in children, because Harrison is dealing with the fact that he lost his mom a year before in a car accident, and his dad is struggling a lot with that. So Harrison is sort of alone in his grief, and the book really addresses how Harrison learns that people and experiences and nature and the arts can all bring him things that help him heal. So I hope that helps answer the question about how you would sell it.
Yes, that was beautiful. And yes, and just, again, I only was able to read the excerpt, but I can totally see all of that. So I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. All right. So moving on. So this is your second book,
Yes.
The Elephant's Girl, right here. So how has your experience writing this one differed from writing your debut book?
Well, in a lot of ways, it was easier than writing my debut book, but there were some things that were harder. So with The Elephant's Girl, I had all the time in the world because I hadn't been published yet. So I was looking for an agent and looking for an editor and on submission, and I really had all the time in the world to write it, revise it, try again, revise it, And then with Tips for Magicians, it was different because I was writing it already under contract before I even started. So I had different sorts of deadlines, but it was nice to write a book knowing it was already going to be published. It was already going to sell. So that was really nice. And I also loved having the benefit of a brilliant editor and an agent that I could work with. And they're really great about collaborating with me and brainstorming ideas when I want to kind of discover where else could I take this character, or where else might I take this plot. And also with writing The Elephant's Girl as my debut, that was a process for me to learn what works for me and what doesn't work well in writing. And it was nice to write another book having some of those things already figured out. So I felt like that was easier. But something that I felt was a challenge with writing Tips for Magicians that was a little different than writing The Elephant's Girl is that I already had a book out, which came out during COVID. So I was working really hard to promote and get the word out and reach out to teachers and booksellers and everything for The Elephant's Girl so that it could be, people could learn about it. So doing that at the same time that I was also writing another book under deadline, that was a challenge. It was hard.
That does, yes. You're juggling promoting and writing a new book, and now it's like, okay, I'm trying to promote this old one, but my head's completely in this other story.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, oh wow. But that's cool. So
something else I thought about that was different is I have special places I like to go when I'm writing that sort of speak to me, that help me feel my muse, and just help with getting it done. And I wrote the first draft of Tips for Magicians in fall of 2019. So it was before 2020 hit, and so I was writing that first draft in libraries, in the mountains, outdoors, in cafes and bookstores, all these places where I feel inspired to write. And then when I was in the middle of editing it, we were all in quarantine, so I was at home. And so I discovered, and this might be interesting as when people read it to know this, that when I was revising, I did it all outside. I just had to be outside. I couldn't be in my house. This book is outside. Everything happens outside. And so I sat outside on my patio furniture in my field, out looking at the mountains or whatever, to just be able to hear the birds and be in nature, listen to the wind, and I just had to have that.
Oh, that does make sense, especially during quarantine. It's like,
yeah.
Like, let me out of here. So, and then just a follow up to that, I'm always interested on like why you choose to write like in the age group or the genre that authors do. So why did you choose to write middle grade, and was it always your intention to like write middle grade, or did it start off wanting to write something else?
Well, so I definitely started out wanting to write middle grade because I was a fourth grader when I decided I wanted to be an author. And so obviously the things I was reading at that time, what was available to me for that age range, were things like Ramona Quimby, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Summer of the Monkeys by Wilson Rawls. Let's see, what else? Oh, No Promises in the Wind by Irene Hunt. So I was reading those books, and I thought, I want to be a writer. I want to be an author. So of course what I want to write is about kids like me and kids my age and everything. And then when I was an adult and I started writing for publication seriously as an adult, I tried everything. I did some picture books. I wrote a YA. I wrote 2 middle grades. I was starting another YA when I got the idea for the Elephant Scroll. And I think what I was doing was just testing the waters and seeing what voices I had and what was really going to stick and what was going to resonate with people when they read my writing. And that's not to say that I can't write resonating YA, but really I think that for me, middle grade emotions and experiences are what live most on the surface in my head. I think maybe it's because that time in my life was when I had the most defining experiences that really settle with me even as an adult, that I go back to a lot. So I think that's why I went to that, and I'll keep writing middle grade as long as I can. But I may branch out in some others too at some point.
Well, I'm sure branching out would be wonders for you, but I really do think you found a great calling in middle grade, because you write so well. Like
thank you.
But anyway, actually, that leads nicely into my other question, because speaking of voices, and you write like these awesome, like relatable, like kid characters, like, and it's sometimes it's hard for, someone, an adult, to write like this is a child, so you have to write it like it's a kid, not an adult writing a kid.
Right.
But in your first book, we have Lex, who's this young girl, as our guide. Now, Tips for Magicians, you switched over to Harrison, who's a boy. They both have very distinct like voices. To me, they really sound like 11, 12-year-old kids. But was it harder for you to write in the voice of a boy than a girl? Because you could say you have been like a 12-year-old girl. You've never been a 12-year-old boy.
Right. Yes. Well, that's a very good point, because they definitely are different, and I needed to get into Harrison's head, especially because I mentioned earlier, like, you have all the time in the world when you're writing your debut. So I had spent years in Lex's head. Not to say that I don't have other characters. I had written other characters in other drafts of other books as well, but I had spent a long time, really thinking about Lex and who she is and how she sees the world. So I did need to spend some time really getting into Harrison's head. One thing that helped was a little bit of my origin story for how I got the ideas, kind of start percolating for this story is that my son was performing, and he was 12 at the time. And, you know, I'd been raising him, and he and I are also very close, so I spent a lot of time with him and his friends. And so I started really paying attention to him and his friends and how they interact with each other and things they say, what matters to them. I also pay a lot of attention to children in general when I have a chance to be around them, whether they're like my nieces and nephews or friends of my kids or something. I pay attention to things like empathy in children, because children, if they are feeling safe, they naturally have that. And so it's interesting to watch that ring out in children when they feel safe and when they don't, how that changes. And it's one of the things that I find most inspiring for me when I'm writing characters, is to think about that. So Harrison is kind of inspired by many things from life. He's definitely unique, but he is inspired by people and experiences that I've seen. But I think the biggest challenge that I had with writing both Lex and Harrison was that I tend to write somewhat emotionally mature children who I don't know how to. I guess I tend to write like kind of kids that are mature and empathetic, and sometimes that means that I'll use like some words or phrases or something like that that sound a little more adult. And so I have a fantastic editor, and that was a big help, because she's always able to pinpoint those things and say, you know, that thought process right there gets kind of interrupted by an adult thought, and you need to fix that. But so that, obviously, a great editor is always a treasure, so that really helps. But I think anytime I would have a hard time with Harrison or Lex, it was usually because I didn't know what they wanted next, like what they're motivated by in this particular scene. So I would take a break from the story and go back to kind of a blank sheet of paper and start interviewing them. I ask them questions, and I let them ask me questions back. It's not just me with a list of questions, but something they say, they might come back and say, yeah, well, I have a question for you about this. And so as soon as I start interviewing them, I can get back to who they really are. And that helped me with Harrison quite a bit.
That's such a cool tip too. Oh my gosh. So that kind of leads into my other question, and this is more of a statement. So like, and you were saying like, sometimes, you know, when you're writing your draft, you know, sometimes you interject some more adulty word because you are an adult, and you know, and that's where the editor comes in. However, you do kind of have to balance. You don't want to write the kid like they're an adult, but you also, I always feel it's really important in kids, when you're writing for children, to make them sound like kids, but also not talk down to your readers. Like, not like kids are so smart. They just are. And I feel you did a really good job with them.
Thank you.
And you know, thanks to your editor as well, of course.
Yes.
And so what, this is more like, I feel like it's a more philosophical question, but why, like, is it so important to make sure if you're writing for kids, to both make them sound like kids and not like an adult writing a child, but also not to talk down to the readers that are reading them? And like, you already kind of gave tips, but if you have any other tips for like maybe aspiring middle grade authors on how to do that, that would be awesome.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so one thing that comes to my mind, other than having a brilliant editor, of course, is to not insert lessons on purpose. I think that's sometimes where we as adult writers trip ourselves up a little bit, and then we have to go back and fix it. As if we're thinking, oh, well, this is the lesson that he's going to learn. Maybe we didn't start the story out thinking we're going to teach a message, but we might think as we're writing, oh, he's going to learn this lesson through this process. As soon as we start really thinking like that, we have to kind of back up and go, wait a minute, what is the kid really thinking and feeling in this moment? And is this an adult thought, or is this the character's thought? And I don't know if I have a really good tip for that, except to just make sure that, like I said, interviewing them can help to kind of get it in their voice. You can go back as the author and say, okay, I'm the author now, and I'm going to ask you how you feel about what's happening right here and what you think about it. And don't be like, what are you learning from this? But just, what do you think about this? And then just let them talk and let that kind of flow and let that come. And then make sure as you then go back and write the scene, that you're framing everything that's happening in the story to a child's experience. And something that helps me with that is, like I said before, I feel like I write middle grade well, and it comes naturally to me because a lot of my experiences and emotions from things that happened when I was in middle grade live really close to the surface in my head. And so it might be more challenging for some than others, depending on the childhood you had, or if it's not good for you to go back and think about your childhood in some people's cases. But I think being able to say, okay, my character feels sad in this moment. I may not have experienced what this character is experiencing, but what did I do when I was a kid when I was sad? What made me sad? How did I respond? How did I react? What did I do? And try to get into that feeling of being that age.
Those are really good tips.
Thanks.
They really are, because it really, and it seems to work. So
okay, well, I guess it's working for me. I hope it can help someone else out there.
Yay. All right, so now I know we just said, don't teach lessons on purpose, but obviously in your books, though, both of them, they do deal with like some pretty tough issues that kids do deal with. So like, Tips from Magician, obviously you've already mentioned Harrison's mother has died like a year prior to the story starting. And I found it interesting, just in the little bit I was able to read, it's not just like the loss of his mother's death. He's also feeling like he's lost his father, despite the fact that his father is still alive, because it's like he's pulling away. So I personally have always felt fiction is just like, it's the best way to offer kids like a safe haven to deal with things, because kids, unfortunately, there are kids that have to deal with losing a parent. There are kids that have to deal with like serious issues in their lives. And I'm assuming you agree with that. It's a really safe haven for kids to deal with that. And what other books like yours would you like to see on shelves? They don't have to be like specific titles but like kinds of books.
Okay. I think I'd love to see, and there may be a lot of these out there, but I would love to see more books about adoption, kids, like blended families through adoption. I'd love to see more books about maybe kids dealing with having siblings who are having challenges or issues where they may be bigger than what a middle grade kid understands, or something like how they might have to navigate that and understanding those emotions when they just want to help a sibling. I think those things can be very helpful and valuable, because I do think a lot of children deal with that, like the complicated family dynamics when someone in the family is struggling that may not be the main character. And something else I thought about is, I think something that can be maybe not negative, but like a heavy issue sometimes is religion, and the type of life a child might lead in their home based on their religious observances of their family. And there's so many different dynamics with that. But I love it when writers write about those experiences too, because I think, there are children who can relate to those also.
Mm-hmm. So, and actually, I like that you brought up the whole adoption thing, because it's true. I haven't seen a lot of that. I've seen like the blended family story, but it's always like, oh, my mom married his dad or something. Like, it's not like the kid is not being like adopted into a family. They have like the family, and then their parents get married, which is also a thing. I mean, I'm definitely it's not. But I'm trying to think of ones where it's like straight up like adoption or like foster care that like, and I'm like, I don't remember seeing anything like that for the middle grade audience. There are several picture books, but I'm like, well, what about like middle grade kids that are like, what about if they're getting adopted, or if they know someone who's getting adopted or something? I don't know. And I don't know, because I wasn't adopted, but I did have a friend in school who both her and her brother were adopted. And I'm like, because it's like kind of like not being able to see yourself, because like if all the kids in all the books you're reading are, the biological kids, that's an interesting thing. Yeah. That I've not seen.
Well, I'm glad to talk to you because you're a book buyer and a bookseller and you read so much middle grade. So that's interesting to know that because we'll talk about this in a little bit. I'm not going to jump ahead on you, but the next project I'm working on has a character who is adopted. I felt passionately about that, and I'm like half adopted because I lost a parent when I was young, and then my mom remarried and my new dad adopted me. And then I have siblings that are from my adopted dad and my mom. And so, I think that that's something when I was a middle grade reader, I would have loved to have found a book with a character like that. So
like that, exactly. Yeah. Because yes, I was like, because I'm trying to like rack my brain and maybe I've just missed them. And that is, I don't know, but like I've seen so many middle grade books that do deal with serious issues, but not really a lot of that. So yes, we need more of those. That's very good, and I feel like you could do that very well, so I'm very excited about this.
I will have to run with that.
Yeah. Oh my god. So another just quick little serious thing, because this is I feel like helping this like age group deal with like a serious loss, like the loss of a parent, is very important, and it can be hard at that age to know what the words are for the things that you're feeling, even though you feel them. And I always felt like it'd be so much easier if there was just a book that said everything and you can just pass it to them and be like, this is how I'm feeling. So we have grief groups for middle school students at some of our like local school libraries and everything. And these are specifically for kids who have lost a parent. So there, and is there anything like you would love to see us as booksellers do to help get these types of books into the hands of kids who could like really relate to them the most?
Oh, I would love that so much. And I'm so glad to hear that. I mean, not that it's sad that there's a need for it, but there is a need for it. So I'm really glad that school libraries have grief groups like that. That's wonderful. I'd love to see booksellers reach out if booksellers like you are aware of groups like that in schools, to reach out to them and say, if you're interested, if any of the kids would like to try writing or reading fiction that addresses grief, to help them kind of process or help them think about or do exactly what you said, to say, what, in this book, what this boy is saying, this is how I feel. And, to be able to give the words to somebody. Because I do think there are quite a few middle grade books out there that do address grief. They may be in different ways. They may not all be the loss of a parent. Could be like a grandparent or a sibling or a pet, but I think there are a lot out there, and I would love it if booksellers reached out to school groups, to grief groups for children, if they're aware of them. And also, I would love to just have booksellers say, we know this author, and she's willing to do a free Zoom or Skype session Q&A with the group. I would love that. And bookstores can set those things up with schools sometimes, I understand. So, yeah.
Yes. It has gotten interesting with COVID because they're always like, because last year was insane. Nobody knew anything about what we were doing. But going into this year, it looks like they might have more of a plan.
Okay, that's good.
Because they're a little more ready for like the idea of like because in our schools, it seems the general consensus is that they're not going to have anyone who's not necessary go into the schools, but they are, I think, more equipped now for virtual things,
right.
Or at least they want to be.
That's
because they did, like, school author visits were a thing, but now they're like, well, maybe they can't come in person.
Yeah. Well, we have learned a lot about the options virtually, and it makes it even more possible to do things all over the country if you're doing it virtual.
Exactly. Like you're in Utah right now.
Exactly. Along the lines, I just wanted to add one more thing, if that's okay, because we were talking about these grief groups. One thing I felt I really wanted to say is, as I was writing this book, it was really important to me because I have experience with grief as a child. And I think that when I was a child, I didn't really understand what my grief was, what I was dealing with, or that I was dealing with it, until I became an adult and I recognized what those emotions were, what those feelings were, the feelings of being displaced and not understanding myself and my place in my family, and all of those things, and even struggling to express those things to friends when I felt them. It was very important to me, since I'm writing magical realism, that the magic that's in it is a way to address the emotions and the healing process, but that it doesn't fix it. That the magic does not come in and rescue and take away the pain, but instead it facilitates the healing through inspiration, through recognizing what help there is available. Other parents or friends, trusted adults, experiences that you might have with a person or out in nature, other people that have something to give or something to offer because they're emotionally available to do that for the child, and how arts can bring healing and how animals can bring healing. So I just wanted to express that that's what's in the book, so that anybody who may know a child who's dealing with grief won't be concerned that the magic in the story is going to fix everything, because I don't want to put that kind of a Band-Aid on for children reading it who, they don't have that fix.
Yeah.
That was something I'd made very conscientious decisions about as I was writing the book.
Oh, that's so nice. And we actually have a really great comment from Unlikely Courage again. So about our discussion with this is such a critical subject, especially for kids who don't remember their parent. And they say, I was one of them. So I love that they love that you're doing this, Celesta.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes. So, all right. So not that we have to totally abandon the tough topic, but as you started off our conversation with magical realism now, which is, I feel so much fun. Let's talk about it in middle grade.
Okay.
So obviously you do consider your books magical realism. I always like to ask them, because some authors say they don't. So I always like to make sure I don't want to put words in people's mouths. So my question is, what would you define magical realism as? As a genre.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, maybe people are very opinionated about this, but yes, I do. I do agree that my books are magical realism. That's how I think of them. And to me, magical realism is when you take a story that is contemporary or historical. The setting could be historical, and it feels very, very well grounded in the world we know. But there are some elements that have whimsy or whispers of magic or a little twist that is fantastical, that makes it slightly different than the world we know or the history that we know. And I think it's magical realism if you're able to use that little whimsy twist, that little fantastical element or magic to facilitate the character's experience and journey. So that's what it is to me.
That is such a perfect answer. That's exactly what I think of magical realism. Okay. Yes, those things. Because we do have booksellers have very conversations that you really think that totally booksellers would have, because we sit around and when we're not as busy, we're so what about this book and what about this genre? And it's there's this debate. I say it's a debate, but it's friendly. Don't worry, guys. About, if it's magic, doesn't that just automatically make it fantasy? And I'm no, it doesn't automatically make it fantasy. But as we were talking about this a lot earlier, because we're both I'm very excited that we're magical realism geeks. But why do you think this magical realism has become so popular for middle graders?
I think it's because middle graders, they tend to be voracious readers, right? And so they read a book, and it's tough on librarians, teachers, and booksellers and parents, because they'll read a book, they're like, give me another one. I want something else like this. And I think that they are searching for themselves in the books, and they're searching for their dreams and their imaginations in the books. And so if you can combine that, where you have this contemporary world where they can see themselves in the story, this feels like my house, or this feels like my state where I live. This feels like my school. But then you also insert some magic in there, so it gives them that boost of imagination that they're craving. I think that's why it's so popular, because you've got both of those things coming together.
I totally agree. And yes, and it's extra. I feel like it's extra popular at Town Book Center just because I'm there and being here. But it's so nice to me when it actually does take, and then kids come back in and they've read this and they want something else that's magical realism like that, and it's I have lots of things for you guys. You are now my favorite people. But yeah, and I love that magical realism, what it does is it takes something that's like so mundane that you could totally like feel like you're just dropping yourself into it, and then puts the idea that magic, since it exists in little whispers there, could maybe exist in little whispers in your own life. Because it's like, this is some, like you said, this feels like my house or my state or something.
I agree.
Like,
yeah.
Like this doesn't feel, it's not that they're, I love fantasy too, guys. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not like a fantasy world. Like I feel like this could be my house. Like,
right.
But yes. And so this is more a statement now, and I'm finding the magic in the mundane in your books. I love how you do it. It's so like wonderful. Like you weave like the two things together. Like you said, like, I mean, like Lex with her like connection to Naya, the elephant. There's like, you know, this muse. I point to the book because I wish it was here for tips.
Here you go.
I don't have it yet. But, and like muse and like, oh, it's a muse that can grant wishes if you win the art contest. And it's just like, it seems like how are you able to like just slip those in your writing so like seamlessly into the real world that it just feels like, oh yeah, there's a muse that grants wishes. Of course there is. That makes total sense. There's a girl who can like sort of telepathically communicate with elephants. Of course she can. Like it seems like, oh yes, I feel like I could go somewhere tomorrow and meet someone who can do that. So like, how are you able to like do that? And then do you have any tips for like aspiring authors if they want to like write something like magical realism, like a story?
I love this question. First of all, thank you for your praise. That's so lovely. I appreciate that so much. And I love talking about this, so I'm glad you asked this question. So I'm kind of an interesting character myself. I think that I live in a fantasy world sometimes. I see things differently than they really are. My husband's constantly saying, you think you're going to be on time, that you can do all of these things and you'll still be on time, but you can't do all of these things. Time doesn't work differently for you than everyone else. And sometimes I'll get very emotional and just kind of affected by things that to others I think sometimes seem very simple. My kids know this. They know, oh, mom's crying again. But that it doesn't mean I'm sad. It means something really touched my emotions because I thought it was beautiful or it was cool or it was special in some way. So I think I have trained myself, and part of this I think started when I was a middle grade reader and just reading voraciously and wanting to be an author and just really building my imagination. But I think that I have trained myself to see the world in terms of awe and wonder. And that's really a lovely place to be. And it's a lovely way to live. It doesn't work all the time. Like definitely I have challenges and things that are hard. But when I spend time out in nature, I'll sit there and I'll just really pay attention to all of my senses. And I'll think, what if this happened? What if this happened? I'll ask myself what if questions. I'll notice the things that give me goosebumps, like the things that, and this happened with the elephants girl. I sat and watched elephants for hours. I watched elephant cameras. I visited websites of sanctuaries, and I had spent a lot of time seeing elephants when I worked in a zoo when I was young, at the Henry Dorley Zoo in Omaha. And just, you know, that's what happened to me is I watched elephants and I listened to their rumbling sounds and I just got goosebumps. And I was like, this feels like magic to me. And I think that's where magical realism comes in for me, is that the things that give me goosebumps, the things that really touch me emotionally, and those moments of just sitting quiet and listening and using all my senses, what is it that I can't get my mind off of? What is it that really stands out to me? So for writers out there who are interested in writing magical middle grade or magical realism, try going someplace new and then just sit there in the quiet for a while. People can be around you talking, but you sit there quietly, not on your phone, and you just observe and think and listen and notice how you feel. Sit out in nature and do the same thing. And then I also think of friendships and relationships, and I think about what is it about these relationships that are special, that tugs at my heart, that makes me feel like there's something bigger than myself. And why is it like that? Ask those questions. What is it that's bigger about this? how can that be shown through something that has not been seen in this world, but that I could imagine? And that's how I do it.
So I am just sitting here and listening to you, and I am feeling very emotional. As you are talking, I was totally that kid that I would just go outside and I would just lay down in our yard and I would just like listen to the wind and the trees, and I swear to you, I could hear the trees talking. And that, like, I was like, okay, yes, because yes, I did all those things, and I just feel like it's so great. And
well, see, we were meant to meet each other. We have all this in common. We
have so much like in common, and I love that. And that might be why I love your books so much. Yes, this is who I was as a child. I was looking, like I was saying, I look for the magic in everything, and so that's so nice. Oh my gosh, so this is actually pretty exciting. We have a comment from Alyssa Wishengrad, who is actually another middle grade author.
Oh, yes.
We had on for a virtual event a few weeks ago for her book, The Verdigris Pond.
Verdigris Pond. I've read that book, and it's so good.
Isn't it? It's so good. And she's saying that she also loved how it's not only the kids who can experience the magic in your books, Celesta, but by including at least some adults and experience the magic, I think it inspires kids to hold fast to that magic as they grow up.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Alyssa. I love that.
So yes. So that, hi Alyssa, since you're watching, hello.
Hi, Alyssa.
Oh my gosh. But yes, I totally agree with that. That's how my brain has remained half child through all of this. like, yes. Oh my goodness gracious. So that, I love that. I love all the things you just said. It's so fantastic. All right. So getting into the researchy part of writing. So I know that for the Elephant Scroll, you did do a lot of research into like elephants,
yes.
And how they communicate and everything. In Tips for Magicians, we have I feel like magic tricks and like the art of being a magician and other kind of creative things. They play a really big part in the story. They're kind of like, yeah. So what kind of research did you have to do for that? And then do you have any recommendations of books or sources for kids who might want to learn more about, magic or elephants after reading your books?
Oh, I love this question because I really love the aspect of research. When I was younger, I wouldn't have thought, in high school, research paper, that sounds really boring. But I learned as a writer, as an adult, that research is the best. Because especially if you're writing a story about something that is important to you, that you're really excited about already, then finding experts on that topic is the most fun thing ever. So first I want to say, especially if there are any children watching or who watch this later, that you don't have to have lots of money and you don't have to be able to travel or drive yourself somewhere in order to have fun doing research. Because I have the means as an adult and making money from my books that I can do some things, a little extra for my research, but definitely there are ways to do it without all of that. I learned a lot from books about magic, but I asked some magicians what they recommended. And you can do that even by going to some of their websites. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, which you'll find in Tips for Magicians. That's what Harrison does. He watches a lot of YouTube videos of magicians who are willing to share, this isn't my top secret trick that I make money doing, but here's a fun card trick I can teach you to do. And I'll teach you. So I watched a lot of those. I also watched, this was very fun, the televised talent shows, all the variety. I'm sure you know which ones I mean, but there's a lot of them that have magicians on there. And I kind of binge watched those. And my family was like, we're watching this magician again. But I loved it. It was so fun. And I also visited a magic store in Las Vegas. I was there with my daughter. So I went to a magic store, walked in, talked to a couple of people who worked there, and a couple of them were very hardworking magicians themselves. So they were willing to show me a couple of things and give me some suggestions. And this is one that they gave me. Don't know if you can see that. The Royal Road to Card Magic. It's actually a book that was written originally in the 1950s, I believe. So the book itself reads a little bit older style writing, but it's still good for about ages 10 and up, I would say. if they want to learn, if kids want to learn how to do card magic. And there's also these DVDs that I got, and you might even be able to find some clips of those on YouTube. I don't know. But there are 6 instructional DVDs on different types of card magic. It talks about how to do different shuffling techniques and fancy shuffles that wow the audience, sort of distract them as you're doing like sleight of hand or something. And so that's the one like resource that I could think of that I thought would be good to share with kids who might be interested in card magic. But the really exciting thing that I got to do that was unusual, when I decided I was writing a book about a kid who wanted to be a magician, is I was in Las Vegas with my daughter already for a dance thing. And we wanted to go see a show. And I was like, I'm writing this book about a magician. Let's go see a magician. So we went and saw David Copperfield live. And David Copperfield's a legend. And he does a lot of really big performance style tricks, but he also does card magic style tricks as well. So it was really fun to go watch him in person. And I picked up a lot of the tips for magicians, the actual tips that Harrison uses in the book from watching the actual David Copperfield. So as you go through the book, there's each chapter. In the first section, it's all tips for magicians, and each chapter is a different magic tip that Harrison learns or he talks about that has something to do with experiences that he's having. And I got those tips from watching David Copperfield and probably this Royal Road to Card Magic. And then as far as the Elephant Scroll and Elephant Research, this is the book that I highly recommend middle grade readers get if they're interested in elephants. The Elephant Scientist by Caitlin O'Connell. It's won awards, and it has real life pictures of her working with elephants in the field and all of her research about elephant relationships, elephant emotion, their communication styles, all of that. It's a lovely book, and it's got a lot of really cool field pictures in there.
Nice. That's so cool. I can't believe you saw David Copperfield live.
Okay, I have to say, he made a car appear in the air above us. I mean, it was amazing. My daughter and we had seats kind of in the middle of the theater, and the car appeared right over our heads.
Wow.
I still am kind of baffled by it. But again, I don't mind, like I said, being in a situation where I can just sit there and feel the goosebumps and go, okay, yeah, this is
happening.
Like.
There's a car above our heads. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh. All right. So now you already kind of mentioned this earlier when you were talking about you were writing tips for magicians, and then you also were promoting the Elephant Scroll. Yeah. So I will say, I know that it was probably very difficult to do, but you are very good at promoting your work.
Oh, thank you.
We have like the stickers, the bookmarks, the book plates. You're on social media. It's like the whole 9 yards, all that. It struck me because this is often something that authors overlook, especially if they're being published in if they're not self-publishing. Like they think, oh, I'm in a publishing house. It's like, well, major publishing houses have lots of authors. You are just one. Right. So why is promoting your books yourself, even if you're not self-published, so important? And do you have any tips for writers on how to do this?
Yes.
Usually not the fun part of being a writer.
Exactly. It's not usually the thing that writers decide to be writers for. They didn't decide to be a writer so they could also be a marketer. And I think that's like another hour-long conversation, so I'll try to abbreviate. But I think what actually was a blessing in disguise, or a silver lining, whatever you want to call it for me, was when COVID hit and I knew it was going to cancel all my stuff. Everything that I had planned for the Elephant Scroll, I had a big book launch planned. I had a lot of in-person activities planned and ways to connect with readers. And when that got all shut down and the world was so uncertain, I realized, first of all, the publishers were scrambling because this wasn't anticipated for them either. And I'd not been published before, so I didn't really understand in depth what publishers are able to do and what they're willing to do for their many authors, because there are a lot of authors, and any given publisher is going to have a lot of new books come out every year. So there's only so much that they can or set aside the time and the funds to do. But one thing they can't do is they can't create personal connections for me. They can make connections with teachers and booksellers, and they can get the word out about the book in certain ways, but they can't make those personal connections for me. And so that's when I thought, okay, what was it that I wanted to write for? Why was I writing in the first place? And it's because I wanted to connect with children who love books like I love books and want to read the kinds of things I want to read. And that was the main reason. So I thought, then I need to create things and reach out in ways that can get things to children that they would like. I started to think about, what would young readers like? Maybe a printable map of my zoo for the elephant squirrel, or a virtual field trip. I used Google Slides and the Bitmoji classroom that a lot of teachers do, and I created a virtual field trip of the zoo, and it's on my website. And so that kids who read The Elephant Squirrel who want more, they can connect with that. I started reaching out to schools and booksellers to do visits, even just virtual ones, so that I could connect with readers even in the classrooms over Zoom or something like that. And then I also thought, like, what resources would teachers appreciate having that would help them want to use my book in the classroom, that would take a little load off their plate, that would make them appreciate using my book and presenting it to their classes. And so then I started working on materials that teachers could use in the classroom. And I would say, for advice on this, is that promotion definitely came secondary to me. It's not something I was automatically good at. I still think I'm learning new things every day and trial and error kind of things. But for new authors, or authors starting out, or they've been published but they want to do more promotion, my advice is, do the type of promotion that you enjoy. Don't try to do everything just because you see another author do everything. I tried a lot of things because I saw other authors doing them, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And I didn't like it, or it didn't work out, or I wasn't good at it. And so then I went back to, why do I write, and what am I good at? And, am I good at creating content that kids like? Am I good in front of the camera making little promotional videos, or telling kids about books that I read recently that I liked? Or talking about elephants or whatever. So it just becomes, I think promotion works really well if you do what naturally feels good, what you're naturally good at, play to your strengths, and then network and talk to other authors about the resources that they've discovered to find people to help you do the things that you're maybe not good at or you don't feel comfortable doing. Because not everybody's going to know how to make a curriculum guide. I tried, and I think I did really good for someone who's not regularly teaching fourth grade, and not in those teacher trainings and doesn't have that experience. So I reached out to people who did have connections with teachers. I reached out to teachers that I know and just started talking to people and asking, what is it that you need? What works in the classroom? I had a wonderful teacher who I know here in Utah, who wanted to use the elephant squirrel in her classroom for her guided reading groups. And she was willing. I donated a classroom set to her, and she was willing to share with me the questions and answers and the vocabulary words that came up and the things they discussed in the classroom that resonated with the children. And that was a big help to me. So if you're like, I feel like I should do more. I'm a middle grade author and I want to do these things, but I'm not good at them. Don't make yourself be good at them. Find people who are and ask them to help you. And use their expertise and offer them something great for helping you out.
That's such great advice. And it's like, it works so well. And I just do want to say that Alyssa came back on to say hi to us.
Good. Hi, Alyssa.
Says, congratulations to you. She's so happy that the book, that this book will be out in the world soon.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Now this, I find, I like these, as we're coming towards the end of the questions I have, guys. So, but these are questions I really like. So as I said earlier, middle grade books that, are magical realism, they become pretty popular. And as you did mention, they tend to attract very voracious readers. And they're just spinning through books. And so we as booksellers we're always getting requests for recommendations from parents or from the kids themselves about, hey, I just blew through this book. Now I want another one. And so obviously we can give recommendations. Eventually we kind of are like, oh my gosh, they've read all my recommendations. What do I do? Do you have recommendations for people after they've blown through Tips for Magicians and The Elephant's Girl?
Yes, they're probably ones that, the ones that I could think of are ones you already know about. So I don't know if I'm helping you that much, but Kate DiCamillo's books, she even has Whispers of Magical Realism in Because of Winn-Dixie, because it's just a little bit, but I noticed it the first time I read it, when it first came out, the candy that has the sweet and sour because they can put sadness into the candy. Do you remember that? The litmus lozenges? Anyway, and Catherine Applegate's books, of course, the one and only Ivan has that connection with the gorilla, and there's an elephant in that. Jennifer Holmes' books, those are great fun, and I feel like a reader who likes her books would like mine. And then a couple I can think of, they're like similar characters, family and friendship themes, but they're not magical realism, are Turtle Boy by Evan Wilkenstein and Any Day With You by May Respicio. Also,
I love Any Day With You.
Oh, yes. Do you? And May's coming out with a new book soon, Huddled in a Slime War.
Yeah. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Me too. It's getting great reviews, so I'm excited about that.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. So this is sort of a follow-up connector question. We do have a section, I think, and I was telling you about it earlier, that we have Department 22, or if you like this, try that. So what books would you want to see on the shelf alongside yours? Like alongside that? Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to shoot for the moon on a couple of these. The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise, and by Daniel Meinhardt. And then, have you read A Dog Called Homeless by Sarah Lean?
I haven't, but that sounds like a book I would want to read.
So what's really fascinating, I need to tell you, I know we're running short on time, but I had already written a full first draft of Tips for Magicians, and I came across A Dog Called Homeless, and I read the little blurb about it, and I was like, what? This is crazy. And so I read it, and what's so fascinating, my story and A Dog Called Homeless are completely different stories, completely different time periods. They were written, by different authors in completely different times, but there's a dog in it that's very important, and there's a dog in Tips for Magicians that is important to the main character, like kind of to his journey. And also, the girl in the story of A Dog Called Homeless her mother has died, and Harrison's mother has died. And the girl in A Dog Called Homeless has decided she's not going to speak anymore. After her mom dies, she just decides to just be silent. Harrison doesn't do that, but he stops singing when his mom dies. So I read that book, and I just got those chills that just take you over, where you're like, some ideas live out there in the world because they're needed, and they can exist, and they can hit different people in different ways, and two different authors can write them, and they'll be completely different stories, but the same feelings are coming through. So I love that one. And then also The Canyon's Edge by Dusty Bowling.
Oh, yeah.
That one has a desert, it deals with some loss, and it has a desert setting. So
nice. Those are great. Those are great books. Love that. All right. So as we're wrapping up here, is there anything new you are working on that you would like to share with us? Because you sort of hinted at it, so now I'm curious.
I did hint at it, and I hinted at it when I was talking about how you kind of, or I like to go new places and sit outside and think about the things that ran through my imagination when I was a kid. And I really went back to an idea from experiences when I was a kid. My family and I used to do a lot of cross-country road trips, and they were usually in a big 10-passenger station wagon with the wood panel siding that would run out of gas all the time or overheat, and we'd be parked on the side of the road. So we got to know rest areas really good, and we spent a lot of time in rest areas across the U.S. highways. And I started to take that idea and think about things I used to imagine when I was a kid. And I thought it was weird how a lot of rest areas, the older ones, look exactly the same. So you could pull off the side of the road off of, some highway, and you go to this rest area and you think, I've been here before. This looks like I've been here before. And then my mom would say, no, you haven't been here before. We haven't been in this one. Well, it looks exactly like this other one. And I thought, what if they were the same, or what if there was a magical portal that took you between them? And what if that was why they looked the same? Anyway, I just ran with this idea, and I don't want to give too much information because we're still submitting this, but it's a magical portal story, portal travel for middle grade readers. It's a potential series. It's maybe a little more fantasy than Tips for Magicians and the Elephant Squirrel because of the portal travel. That makes it less magical realism, more fantasy. But there are secrets in the rest areas. There's reasons that this can happen. There's reasons that kids stumble across it. And there are people and creatures that they meet and problems they have to solve. So that's what I'm working on right now.
So excited. That sounds like so much fun. Because yes.
Good. I'm glad you like it. That's good.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. So many old rest stops, they look exactly like that other rest stop. It's like,
yeah.
Oh God. I'm very excited. I'm very excited now. All right. So wrapping up here, my last question for you is one I always like to ask at the end of all of our author events is, what is one of the most recent books you've read and enjoyed? And then also for you, what was your favorite book as a middle grader?
So a recent book that I read and enjoyed is The Verdigris Pawn by Alyssa Wishingrad. It was so good, and I was on a vacation with my family. We actually went to Bryce Canyon National Park because those are places I like to travel, and a lot of what I write is about those areas. So we were there visiting and hiking as a family, and every night by the stars, I would read her book, and I got to read an advance copy right before it came out, so I was really lucky. So anyone listening, if you love plays for power, fascinating characters, magic, people who are not what they seem, overthrowing a ruler. I mean, it's just wonderful. So yes, I love it.
Much fun. I know.
And then when I was a middle grader, I already mentioned some books I like to read. I really, for some reason, really liked Summer of the Monkeys. I liked so Where the Red Fern Grows was too sad for me. I really had a hard time with the dogs and what happens. But I loved the feel of the writing, and it kind of resonated with some of the country style life that I had sometimes when I was growing up, and I loved imagining myself as this boy in Summer of the Monkeys. He lives in the Ozarks, and near these trees near his home, he hears these noises, and he discovers that there are monkeys in the trees, and they are escaped from a circus train, and which is so fascinating because I ended up writing a book about an elephant that was in a circus. And I hadn't thought about that book for a long time, but I remembered later that I really loved that book. And I also liked a book called Nothing's Fair in Fifth Grade. And I don't even remember the author off the top of my head, but I still have it. I still have my worn, falling apart paperback copy of that. And I think it was because I saw myself in one of the characters in that book, and that really stood out to me. And I loved that, and I also loved fantasy books like, The Prydain Chronicles, The Black Cauldron, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. And so I loved reading books where I could see myself this contemporary story about a fifth grader who has a younger brother and challenges with friends at school, and it wasn't magic at all. And then magical stories, too.
You want to know what? Something so funny when you were saying I liked fantasy stories, my brain immediately thought Chronicles of Prydain before you said it.
I'm starting to think that's not that big of a coincidence. We really did. We would have probably been best friends when we were little kids.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. But yes, so it's been so nice talking with you, Celesta.
This has been great.
Yes, and right before we sign off, I do want to remind everyone, you can get The Elephant's Girl currently in paperback at the Town Book Center. You can go to the store, you can call us, you can order it online. Also, Tips for Magicians comes out on Tuesday, where you can walk right in and get it. If you really can't wait, it is available for pre-order on our website. And then you'll definitely get it on Tuesday.
Oh, and I wanted to say, did you get my package of swag yet?
I'm not sure if it's in yet. I will find out tomorrow. But yes, we are getting a package of swag from Celesta. More fun stickers, bookmarks, all those fun
so
stuff.
If you order from Town Book Center, then you will get a signed book plate to put in your book, as though you got to come to the store and I was there and I signed your book for you.
Exactly.
And some fun stickers too.
We do love our stickers. Everyone loves the stickers. I love all the stickers. Oh, but it's been such a joy talking to you, Celesta. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I loved it. And it was nice to meet you finally. Thank you for championing my books. I appreciate you.
Yay. Thank you. And thank you for writing such good books. It's so easy to champion them when they're this good. Oh, all right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.